Chapter 41. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The principle is the same as God's power shuriken, which belongs to the same ability. It can be said that as long as Bai Ye wants, he can also add the power of God to his black and white swords. Borrowing Hei Tong's 8 rooms is just to get the best of both worlds, so that he can get system points, and the super dangerous species Destigulu will also become a member of the 8 rooms. Bai Ye held the god's power 8 rooms and slashed directly at Destigulu, who was in hibernation. The 8 rooms with the power of God easily broke through Destigulu's extremely hard bones with a devastating momentum, and it was as fragile as thin paper in front of the god's power 8 rooms. When it was hurt, Destigulu was awakened immediately, but before it could get up, the huge skull head was cut off by Bai Ye. Seeing this scene, Hei Tong was immediately surprised. She remembered that the lethality and defense of super dangerous species such as Destigulu were particularly outstanding. The energy waves released could directly destroy the terrain, and there was no weak point on the whole body of bones. She knew very well that her 8 rooms was mainly used to summon corpse puppets. The sharpness of the blade was not outstanding among the weapon-type imperial tools. It was almost impossible to imagine that Chief Bai Ye could easily cut off the head of a super dangerous species. It was hard to imagine how Chief Bai Ye did it. Could it be that the chief was more compatible with the 8 rooms imperial tool than her, so he could exert a stronger power than her? Let's go together. Surprised, Hei Tong ordered the corpse puppet next to him. Although Destigulu was not a dangerous species with strong vitality, it would not die easily if its head was chopped off. Because those corpse puppets were summoned before Bai Ye borrowed the 8 rooms, they would still obey Hei Tong's orders. However, the attack of the corpse puppet had little effect on Destigulu, and it was difficult to break the defense. Fortunately, Destigulu had just woken up from hibernation, and his abilities were greatly weakened compared to normal times. Moreover, his head was chopped off by Bai Ye, so he had no spare energy to fight back for the time being. On the other hand, Bai Ye could cut off a part of Destigulu's body with a casual knife. The first knife cut off the head, and the second knife went straight to the right arm. It turned out that Chief Bai Ye's attack was indeed the most effective. Hei Tong reacted very quickly and immediately reminded Bai Ye, its only weakness is the heart. Destroying its heart directly can kill it. Before planning to hunt Destigulu, she naturally made full preparations and had a clear understanding of Destigulu's known habits, abilities, weaknesses and other aspects. Hearing this, Bai Ye immediately backhanded a knife and directly inserted it into Destigulu's heart. No matter how thick and hard the bones were, they could not stop the 8 chambers of divine power. At this moment, he could feel that there was indeed a huge heart full of vitality inside, but this heart immediately lost its vitality. Ding! The host hunted a super dangerous species and received a reward, 50 system points. As Bai Ye obtained the system points, it also meant that Destigulu died in the 8 houses. The black spell of the 8 houses began to be injected into Destigulu's body. Almost in the blink of an eye, the dead Destigulu was resurrected. Now Destigulu is no longer an enemy, but a member of the 8 houses. Bai Ye returned to Hei Tong and returned the 8 houses to Hei Tong. Thank you. If it weren't for you, I guess I would have to pay a lot of price. Hei Tong said gratefully. It's a small matter. At this time, Bai Ye looked unscathed and calm on the surface, but in fact, his body and pupil power were consumed greatly. The ability of divine power enchantment caused him extremely terrifying consumption, which was much more exaggerated than the consumption of simple virtualization or space transfer. Every time he swung a knife, his body and pupil power were consumed as if he didn't want his life. He was already exhausted after only 3 swings of the sword. Bai Ye suddenly thought that he was a little too cool. Although the divine power enchantment he just used was indeed the most effective means, but fortunately, he gained 50 system points, which was still a good deal. After all, the body and pupil power can be automatically restored, but system points are not automatically obtained. Sir, why are your eyes bleeding? At this time, Hei Tong suddenly reminded him. Really? Bai Ye immediately reached out and wiped the corners of his eyes, and there was indeed some blood on his hands. It was probably just when Hei Tong reminded him, and he didn't even notice it. Compared with the stinging sensation in his eyes and the loss of vision, the bleeding was nothing at all. The pain in the eyes completely covered up the feeling of bleeding. Fortunately, the stinging sensation and the loss of vision. The power will slowly disappear because of his regeneration ability. Sure enough, using 2 imperial tools at the same time just now was too much of a burden for you, right? He Tong couldn't help but worry. Don't worry, I'm fine. Bai Ye said with a faint smile, but he couldn't explain too much about the double divine power. At this time, He Tong took out a white handkerchief and gently wiped the blood left under Bai Ye's eyes. Sir, don't be so stubborn next time. Leave everything to me. He Tong said. Okay. Bai Ye nodded slightly, and at the same time added points to the system through his mind. System points, 60. Ding. The host exchanged physique *40, deducted system points *40. Ding. The host exchanged strength *10, deducted system points *10. Ding. The host exchanged agility *10, deducted system points *10. Strength, 50. Agility, 50. Constitution, 130. By adding points, Bai Ye recovered a lot in all aspects. He suddenly thought that it was necessary for him to keep some system points as a backup in the future. Adding points at critical moments can achieve the miraculous effect of recovering blood instantly. At this time, He Tong was always concerned about Bai Ye's ability to easily kill the super dangerous species with the 8 rooms. She walked over and tried to cut Destigolu. It turned out that the 8 rooms in her hand could not cause very effective damage to Destigolu. It could only cut a shallow knife mark on the surface of Destigolu's bones. Although she did not use her full strength, even if she really used her full strength, it would be far from the amazing effect of Chief Bai Ye's cutting iron like mud, and this also proves that if there was no Bai Ye, He Tong would have to pay a lot of price to hunt this super dangerous species alone. At least a lot of drugs would definitely be unavoidable. Captain Bai Ye, how did you manage to cut its bones so easily just now? Are you really more suitable to be the master of the 8th chamber than me? He Tong turned around and asked Bai Ye. Chapter 42. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bai Ye suddenly felt a little embarrassed and tried to fool around. No matter what, you are the real owner of the 8 rooms, and even if you give the 8 rooms to me, it would be too much of a burden for me to use 2 imperial tools at the same time, wouldn't it? So don't think too much. Okay. He Tong nodded. In this situation, if Bai Ye wanted to take away He Tong's imperial tool 8 rooms, He Tong would really agree without thinking, but in fact, Bai Ye and the 8 rooms are not compatible. Even if he took it, he couldn't exert the full power of the 8 rooms. Besides, he himself disdained to do such a thing. The efficiency this time is still quite fast. Let's go back now. Bai Ye immediately changed the subject. But according to the time, it should be dark outside now. I think it's better to return tomorrow during the day. He Tong said, her concerns are not unreasonable. At night, and flying in the air, it is even more unsuitable for action. Although she has obtained a super dangerous corpse puppet that can be summoned, Destigolu can't fight in the air. Speaking of which, this place is quite suitable for overnight stay, because there is still the residual breath of Destigolu in this cave, which will not dissipate in a short time. Except for super dangerous species, no one dares to approach here. Even if a super dangerous species comes, the noise made by its huge body will wake them up long ago. Okay, then let's return tomorrow. Bai Ye nodded. It's just right to rest for a night. By tomorrow, his body and pupil power will basically recover automatically. I'll bring the mount back to the cave now. It may be dangerous to leave it outside all the time. With that, Bai Ye prepared to return to the ground. I'll go with you. He Tong thought Bai Ye's body was still weak, so he was worried and immediately followed. Destigolu disappeared, and was taken back by He Tong into the 8 rooms and summoned when needed, but speaking of it, the mount is also a small problem for them. He Tong can just find a first-class or special-class flying dangerous species and kill it with 8 rooms, but they are borrowing this mount from the Empire now, so they cannot be irresponsible. When they returned to the ground from the depths of the cave, Bai Ye and He Tong were much faster. When they returned to the ground, it was indeed dark. There were no dangerous species nearby, however. When they found the mount and prepared to take it back to the Saiga cave, the dangerous species Mount suddenly became restless. This reaction may be that it sensed the crisis. Bai Ye's expression condensed, and he immediately scanned the surroundings, and saw a figure of a dangerous species not far away. Sure enough, a dangerous species appeared. Judging from its size, it is probably a special class dangerous species. In such a dark situation, the commander can see it clearly. Hei Tong's tone was slightly amazed, but thinking that this is an imperial weapon, it is normal to have night vision ability. Bai Ye was about to draw the black and white swords behind him, but he heard Hei Tong say, "I will protect the commander this time, using the power of Destigolu." Okay, then leave it to Hei Tong. Bai Ye accepted it casually. By the way, he can also see how powerful the super dangerous species is. 8 rooms. Hei Tong immediately summoned Destigolu with 8 rooms. The ground began to shake violently, and 2 giant skeleton hands broke out of the ground first, followed by a huge body that was nearly 100 meters high. Although it looks like a dinosaur, Destigolu's hands are similar to human hands, and can use both hands flexibly like humans. Destigolu's right hand picked up Bai Ye, Hei Tong, and the dangerous species mount. Even the mount as a first-level dangerous species was not as big as one of its palms. The special dangerous species not far away seemed to have been frightened by the breath of Destigolu, a super dangerous species, and turned around and wanted to run, but since Destiguru has been summoned, how can Hei Tong stop like this? Destiguru, blow it into pieces. Under Hei Tong's command, Destiguru immediately raised his head to accumulate power, and his mouth seemed to be madly absorbing the airflow between heaven and earth and turning it into terrifying energy. Countless airflows were compressed rapidly and continuously. When compressed to the extreme, a beam of extremely terrifying energy waves rushed towards the direction of the super dangerous species. Boom! As shown in the picture. In an instant, a large area of the terrain in front was annihilated by the energy wave. The original plains and hills turned into a canyon, abruptly changing the terrain. As for the super dangerous, the dangerous species, after being baptized by the energy wave, not even a slag was left. It is worthy of being a super dangerous species. This power is really fierce. Looking at the tragic scene in front of him, Bai Ye sighed. If this super dangerous species is used as the material of the imperial weapon, it is obvious that a powerful gun-type imperial weapon can be made. After Destigolu showed his power, no dangerous species dared to approach here. Even their own mounts were scared and fell directly on Destigolu's hands, shaking all over. This was obviously a very scared reaction. After Destigolu put them back on the ground, Hei Tong took them back to the 8th room. Then, while comforting them, they took the dangerous species mounts back to the cave. They stopped halfway and did not return to the deepest part of the cave. It's almost time to spend the night here. The temperature here is not too low. Bai Ye said immediately. The temperature at the deepest part was too low, and it was not suitable for overnight stay. The mount happened to have some things needed for overnight stay, so Bai Ye casually took a blanket and put it on the ground, and then lay down to rest. However, there seemed to be only one quilt, which was brought by Hei Tong. The main reason was that Bai Ye himself did not think of bringing it, because with his physique now more than 10 times that of ordinary people, he would not be afraid of cold, so he was very casual. "Sir, don't you need a quilt?" Seeing this, Hei Tong couldn't help asking. "I don't need it, just cover it." Bai Ye responded. Without Hei Tong's response, Bai Ye thought Hei Tong was going to sleep. As a result, at this moment, he heard footsteps approaching slowly. He immediately turned his head with doubts, and saw Hei Tong walking over with a quilt. "You!" As soon as Bai Ye opened his mouth, Hei Tong lay down directly on his blanket, and then covered himself with the quilt he brought. It seemed a little small, and it was a bit difficult for 2 people to cover the quilt together, so Hei Tong got closer. "This way, the commander won't get cold." Hei Tong's tone sounded very indifferent, but a faint blush had actually appeared on her cute face. She deliberately turned her back to Bai Ye so that he wouldn't see her face. P.S. The 3rd update is finished. Please give me some gifts. Chapter 43. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bai Ye was silent for a moment, and the atmosphere was a little subtle and awkward. In fact, he really didn't need a blanket, but he didn't expect Hei Tong to care about him so much. Maybe he felt that his body was still very weak due to the use of 2 imperial tools at the same time. "What should I say?" "Thank you." Bai Ye thought about it and said this, but he didn't hear He Tong's reply, so he thought He Tong should really fall asleep this time. In fact, it was not the case. He Tong was just embarrassed to reply because he was a little shy. After all, she didn't know everything, and she knew that her action was a bit bold, but today, Commander Bai Ye had paid so much for her, and she couldn't let him get cold while sleeping. Good night. Bai Ye didn't think too much, and said good night and fell asleep directly. After a long while, He Tong seemed to be waiting for Bai Ye to fall asleep, and then he whispered in Bai Ye's ear, "Good night." He had indeed fallen asleep, but He Tong's movement woke him up again, but he just opened his eyes without any extra movements. A night passed, and nothing happened. Early in the morning, Bai Ye and He Tong rode back to the imperial capital. As for breakfast, they dealt with some dry food they brought with them. Before noon, Bai Ye and He Tong returned to the imperial capital. After returning the mount, Bai Ye asked He Tong, "Are we going back to the base now? Or are we going to walk around the street first? The vacation will end in 2 days. If possible, I want to have lunch here." He Tong answered without hesitation. Their assassination team usually eats in the cafeteria of the base, and occasionally when they go out on missions, they can eat in restaurants, pubs and other places outside. In comparison, the food in the base cafeteria tastes much more mediocre. "Okay, take a look at which restaurant you like," Bai Ye said. After spending these days together, he saw that He Tong was a foodie, so he could roughly guess that He Tong was probably not very satisfied with the food at the base. Soon, He Tong chose a restaurant. There was no other reason, simply because the meat aroma wafting from this restaurant was more fragrant. "2 guests, there are seats here." The waiter of the restaurant came to greet them immediately. Bai Ye handed the menu on the table to He Tong first. "Just order whatever you want to eat. This restaurant has a variety of dishes. In addition to dishes with various dangerous species as ingredients, there are also many relatively ordinary home-cooked dishes." He Tong ordered 10 meat dishes right away, and this might not be enough for her. On the other hand, Bai Ye only ordered 1 meat dish, 1 vegetable dish, 1 soup, and 2 bowls of white rice. "Excuse me, do you 2 guests need wine? Or is boiled water enough?" At this time, the waiter asked them. "Just boiled water," Bai Ye said casually. 10 minutes later, the kitchen began to serve dishes. Just as Bai Ye and He Tong were eating, a young woman with a pretty face, blonde hair, golden eyes, a sexy body, and somewhat revealing clothes passed by them. Then, the blonde woman sat in a seat behind He Tong and ordered several bottles of wine. At first, Bai Ye didn't care, but soon he noticed from the corner of his eye that the blonde woman was paying attention to him and He Tong. Bai Ye sat face to face with He Tong, and the blonde woman sat just where he could barely see from the corner of his eye. His consciousness was too sharp. If it were an ordinary person, he probably wouldn't care about the other person's seemingly normal behavior. Of course, it could also be that he was too sharp. In any case, Bai Ye kept a little bit of his attention on the blonde woman. But he didn't show it at all and continued to eat normally. As for He Tong, she paid no attention to the woman who was binge eating behind her. Most of her attention was on the meat delicacies on the table. However, it turned out that Bai Ye's consciousness was correct. This blonde woman was actually a member of the killer organization Night Raid, named Leon. She came to the imperial capital to drink as usual, but happened to meet Bai Ye and He Tong, who were also in the store, especially He Tong, because of Akame. Leon recognized the black-haired girl as Akame's sister, He Tong. Then the boy sitting opposite He Tong must also be a member of the Empire's assassination force. Therefore, Leon couldn't help but pay more attention to Bai Ye and He Tong, and this action was noticed by Bai Ye. "Oh no, it seems to be discovered." At this time, Leon also vaguely realized. She thought to herself that she might have been discovered by the other party. Fortunately, she had not yet revealed her identity as a member of the Night Raid, otherwise she would not have wandered around the streets of the imperial capital openly every day. "Well, it doesn't matter, I'll leave after finishing the rest of the wine," Leona thought to herself and continued to drink as if nothing had happened. She didn't pay attention to Bai Ye and He Tong anymore. After all, with her identity, it was not suitable for her to act in broad daylight and in such a crowded place. It would only be bad to accidentally expose her identity here, not to mention fighting. Akahide had emphasized to them that He Tong was very dangerous, and the strength of the other boy was unknown, so Leona would definitely not act rashly. Sure enough, 10 servings of meat dishes were still not enough for Hei Tong, so she ordered 2 more. You should be full now, right? Bai Ye asked. Well, let's go. After finishing the last bite, Hei Tong got up and prepared to leave. Bai Ye immediately discovered that Hei Tong had eaten so much food, but her stomach didn't look very full, and Hei Tong's figure was very slim, which was completely inconsistent with her exaggerated appetite. Where did all the food go? This was an unexplainable and magical question. Before you leave, at least get rid of the rice grains on your lips. Bai Ye noticed that there was a rice grain on Hei Tong's lips, so he reminded her, even though Hei Tong had just wiped her mouth, a small rice grain still survived near her cheek. Where is it? Please help me take it off. Only in terms of eating, Hei Tong was absolutely not shy. Not only was she not shy, she also asked Bai Ye to help her take it off with an expressionless face. Bai Ye immediately reached out and took off the small rice grain on Hei Tong's face, just as he was about to throw it into the trash can, but Hei Tong stopped him. Wait. What's wrong? Bai Ye asked with a little confusion. The next moment, Hei Tong grabbed Bai Ye's arm, opened his mouth slightly and ate the rice grain on Bai Ye's fingertips. Don't waste food. Hei Tong said with a silly look on his face. Obviously, Bai Ye didn't expect Hei Tong to do this suddenly, and his face was slightly surprised. There was still some warmth on his fingertips. Chapter 44. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There is a secret base in the mountains about 10 kilometers north of the imperial capital. It is the current headquarters of the assassination organization Night Raid. Currently, Night Raid has 7 members, namely, Main, Nageshitan, Akame, Lubbock, Hill, Leon, and Brand. The picture is a bit blurry, so just take a look. Almost everyone is a Taiga user, except for the leader Nageshitan, who does not have a Taiga for the time being, because her previous Taiga pumpkin cannon has been used by Main, and the Revolutionary Army has not yet given her a new Taiga. Leon paid the bill at the restaurant and returned to the Night Raid headquarters from the imperial capital because she wanted to report back about Akame as soon as possible. Leon, why are you back so early today? Seeing Leon coming back, Nageshitan couldn't help asking. Except for Hill and Main who were training outside, the rest of the Night Raid members were in the base. I wanted to stay in the capital for a while, but I met Kurwa while eating at a restaurant. Leon's face was rarely so serious, she was usually carefree. Kurwa. Akato, who was standing by, had her eyes trembled when she heard the name Akato. Kurwa. Lubbock also sighed. All of them basically knew that Kurwa was the most difficult enemy in the Empire's assassination force, but considering the relationship between Akto and Kurwa, Lubbock couldn't discuss Kurwa casually. Akato, what do you think about this? At this time, Nageshitan asked Akto directly. I think something is wrong. As far as I know, the reinforcement team is never allowed to wander around the streets of the capital unless they are on a mission. Do they want to plan something in the capital? Akato expressed her thoughts. So it's worth paying attention to. Maybe they want to target our Night Raid. We should be more careful when carrying out assassination missions in the future. Nagesita nodded slightly. Fortunately, Akame joined our Night Raid, so we have a lot of information about the Empire's assassination forces. Leon said with a smile. Hey, don't talk about this. Lubbock immediately reminded Leon in a low voice. After all, Akame has just joined the Night Raid not long ago, and the Empire's assassination forces are the companions that Akame has been with for a longer time, especially there is a sister who has the best relationship with them. What does it matter? Didn't Akame say it a long time ago? Leon directly put his hand on Akame's shoulder. Yes, I have made up my mind a long time ago. I will never be soft even when facing Hei Tong. Akame said with a resolute look. It is because I love her so much that I want to redeem her as soon as possible. Hei Tong has become the Empire's killing machine. In addition to freeing her personally, Akame can't think of any other way. Very good, we will not forget the original agreement, but you will definitely let Kuroido deal with it yourself. Nagesita also emphasized, only matters related to Kuroido will be dealt with by Akame herself within the permitted scope. This was the only condition Akame put forward when she joined the Revolutionary Army. as for whether Akame wants to save or kill Kuroido, the Revolutionary Army has no objection. At present, saving is almost impossible. Akame tried to persuade Kuroido for several days in a row but failed to persuade Kuroido. Otherwise, if Kuroido could join the Revolutionary Army, their chances of winning against the Empire would increase a lot. However, it is a good thing that Akame can make up her mind to kill Kuroido herself. At least the power of the Empire has been weakened. The rest of the Night Raid organization did not make any comments on Akame's determination, and they all respected Akame's decision. By the way, there was a boy who followed Kuroido at that time. I feel like he looks familiar, but I can't remember where I have seen that face. At this time, Leone spoke again. She was afraid that she would be exposed too obviously, so she didn't dare to look at Haitong and the boy anymore, so she didn't have a clear impression of that face. Do you remember what features he had? Nageshitan asked. Let me think. After thinking for a while, Leone suddenly thought of the most obvious feature. His eyes are red, just like Akatong, but his eyes are scarlet, and there are strange patterns in his eyes. Then, Leone continued, I feel that the boy is not simple either. I only looked at Haitong a few more times after I found him, and it seems that the boy noticed it. Listen to your description. Nageshitan seemed to have thought of something, and immediately walked to the desk and took out Thea portrait appeared. Is it him? Yes, it's him. Leone nodded immediately. No wonder he looks familiar, it's this guy. There are quite a few spies in the imperial capital in their revolutionary army. After all, many members of the Revolutionary Army were originally civilians and military officers of the Empire, such as former General Nageshitan and former soldier Brand, for the Night Raid that specializes in assassination missions in the Imperial Capital. The Imperial Capital Guard is one of the main obstacles, so Bai Ye, who was previously the captain of the Imperial Capital Guard, will naturally be targeted. It's not surprising that his portrait would circulate within the Revolutionary Army. Well, he was the captain of the Imperial Capital Guard before. In the past 2 days, the Imperial Capital Guard suddenly changed people. I was a little curious about where he went, but it turned out that he went to the Imperial Assassination Force. Nageshitan speculated. Bai Ye. I remember that he doesn't seem to be a corrupt official, right? At this time, Rabak said. Yes, since he became the captain of the Imperial Capital Guard, he has done a lot of good things, including the cause of death of the former Captain Oka. It can be said that he has helped us solve a lot of problems, and the people's reputation of the Imperial Capital Guard has also improved rapidly. Nagesita said, he is one of the few officials in the Empire with such a conscience. I guess he was transferred to the Imperial Assassination Force by his superiors. I just don't know what position he holds in the assassination force. But with his style, it is a bit abnormal that he has not been framed by the minister and his lackeys. Brand said, at the beginning, he and his boss General Leva were arrested and imprisoned just because they did not flatter or bribe the minister. General Leva was also charged with false crimes. He could no longer endure the darkness of the Empire and escaped before he was caught and joined the Revolutionary Army. On the other hand, what Bai Ye did was much more excessive than him. It's hard to say. He was transferred to the Imperial Assassination Unit. Maybe he was framed. Let's wait and see what the specific situation is. Nagesita then expressed her thoughts. If it's appropriate, we can also invite him to join the Night Raid. Chapter 45. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At the same time, Bai Ye certainly didn't know what happened at the Night Raid headquarters, and he didn't even know Leona. After he and Haitong left the hotel, Leona didn't follow him and Haitong, so he didn't pay much attention to the blonde woman just now, walking on the streets of the imperial capital. Sir, you really won't do more training during the 3-day vacation? At this time, Haitong suddenly asked. What she wanted to express seemed to be that she wanted to take advantage of this time to receive more training. What's wrong? Do you think the rest time is too long and you need to practice more? Bai Ye asked back. Yes. Haitong nodded and said, this way we will have stronger strength to deal with those guys from Night Raid. My sister alone is already very powerful. Don't be so heavy. Proper rest is good. It's not a good thing to be tense every day. Bai Ye smiled and said, at least in these 3 days, you can relax and enjoy your vacation time. Okay, sir. Hei Tong would not refuse the sir's order, and Bai Ye's words also reminded her that when her companions learned that they could take 3 days off, they all looked very happy, so she realized that maybe she was too tense. Do you want to go find Sai Lu and the others? Or just take a stroll? At this time, Bai Ye asked Hei Tong for his opinion. He himself was casual. After all, he had worked in the Imperial Capital Guard before, and he had already visited the Imperial Capital at that time. Let's just take a stroll. Hei Tong chose the latter. At this moment, Hei Tong suddenly couldn't walk, probably because of the dessert shop on the roadside. Want to eat? Bai Ye asked immediately. Yes, even though he had just finished lunch, Hei Tong, a foodie, was still attracted by the desserts. Then let's go in. I remember this shop. The desserts they make are really good. Bai Ye took Hei Tong into the shop. Huh? Isn't this Captain Bai Ye? I haven't seen you for a few days. The boss said with joy when he saw Bai Ye, because Bai Ye used to patrol the streets every day, many bosses were familiar with him. The business in the shop looks good today. After all, your desserts are really delicious. Bai Ye also greeted the boss. It is our greatest honor to be praised by Captain Bai Ye. The boss was immediately flattered. Old man, why don't you ask Captain Bai Ye and the lady next to him what they need? At this time, the boss's wife reminded the boss. She noticed the lady next to Captain Bai Ye, who was obviously greedy, with saliva almost flowing from the corner of her mouth. Captain Bai Ye and this lady, what do you need? When asking, the boss couldn't help but pay attention to the cute black-haired girl next to Captain Bai Ye. By the way, is this lady a new member of the security team? I don't think I've seen her before. No, in fact, I don't work in the Imperial Capital security team anymore. I've changed to work in another place. This is my current colleague. Bai Ye explained simply. Oh, so that's the case, but in this case. What the boss wanted to say was that the captain of the Imperial Capital security team had finally changed from that uka to the upright Captain Bai Ye, but he didn't expect Captain Bai Ye to resign after such a short time. He felt very sorry and reluctant, but he still didn't say it out loud. If someone with bad intentions heard it and the new captain heard it, he would be in trouble. The boss immediately changed the subject. What do you two want? These are all made this morning, absolutely fresh. Bai Ye said to Hei Tong, you choose. Then I won't be polite. Hei Tong ordered 3 servings of each of the delicious desserts. You actually want so many, even 4 people will find it hard to finish them. The boss was shocked to see that Hei Tong ordered so many. From a normal person's perspective, 2 people can't eat so much. These desserts were all made in the morning, so the boss just served them to Bai Ye and Hei Tong. Bai Ye and Hei Tong sat down at random. Hei Tong immediately enjoyed it, but Bai Ye just watched. After all, he was still full. At the same time, he thought Hei Tong would probably be more protective of food, so he simply didn't eat. Bai Ye suddenly felt that the lunch just now might not have satisfied Hei Tong, and he still had enough energy to eat these desserts. Halfway through the meal, Hei Tong noticed that Bai Ye still motionless. She couldn't help but raise her head and asked Bai Ye, Sir, don't you want to eat? She ordered 3 portions of each dish. In fact, one of them was for Bai Ye. She only needed 2 portions. No, just eat it. Bai Ye shook his head slightly. Really? That's a pity, one of them was originally for you. Hei Tong said lightly. No, I really can't eat this. Bai Ye was shocked. Even if he was hungry, he couldn't eat such a portion. At this time, Hei Tong seemed to taste a particularly delicious pastry, and then picked up a piece with his fork. I think this is delicious, sir, do you want to try it? She took the fork she had used and stretched it directly to Bai Ye's mouth, seemingly not caring about sharing a fork at all. This. Bai Ye wanted to say something, but thinking about it, Hei Tong himself didn't care. What else should he be hypocritical about? He didn't say anything more and just opened his mouth to eat it. It's really delicious, soft and not greasy, and the sweetness is just right. I haven't tried this kind of pastry before, thank you. After tasting it, Bai Ye commented. So you would share the delicious food with others, or are those cookies because they contain drug ingredients? Bai Ye suddenly thought that He Tong might not want others to eat the biscuits containing drug ingredients, so he always emphasized that. This is indeed one of the reasons. But He Tong didn't reveal the other reason. She is not willing to share snacks with anyone. At the same time, the boss and the boss lady on the other side saw this scene with their own eyes. Old man, I thought that Lady Selu was the girlfriend of Lord Bai Ye before, but I didn't expect that I was wrong. I was wrong too. This cute little girl is the real partner of Captain Bai Ye, right? That the boss and the boss lady couldn't help but discuss in a low voice, but it was still not quiet enough, and was heard by Bai Ye and He Tong. He Tong's cute little face suddenly turned slightly red, and he lowered his head and ate the cakes as if nothing had happened. P.S. 3 updates are completed. In addition, starting from tomorrow, it will become 2 updates, because the 10W words will be launched for the first time soon. With the push mechanism of Tomato, bursting updates will do more harm than good, so it is still the same as before to add more updates according to the rewards, and use the reward income to offset the disadvantages of bursting updates. After the division, 1 update will be added for every 200 total gift values, and free gifts generating electricity with love will also count. After all, no one's money comes from the wind, and generating electricity with love can accumulate a lot. It is also very considerable. If there are really rich people willing to reward paid gifts, that would be the best. Chapter 46. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bai Ye noticed He Tong's embarrassed look, and he ate dessert slower, as if his appetite had decreased. He Tong's face was slightly red, and he lowered his head and ate desserts in small bites. Bai Ye felt that He Tong was probably troubled, so he immediately helped He Tong to clarify the misunderstanding. He explained to the boss and the boss's wife, "No, she and I are colleagues, not what you think. Oh, we are too presumptuous." The boss and the boss's wife also realized that they were too offensive. How could they talk so much about Captain Bai Ye's private affairs? Hearing what Bai Ye said, He Tong's face suddenly turned black. The shyness on his face just now disappeared. Seeing this, Bai Ye felt a little confused. Why did he feel that He Tong seemed a little angry? However, He Tong's appetite seemed to be back, and he thought it should be fine. This was actually just He Tong's way of killing time. A large number of snacks were all eaten up by He Tong. You should be full now, right? Bai Ye asked. He Tong's appetite is really amazing. I'm full. He Tong replied lightly. However, she didn't look uncomfortable because of eating too much. Bai Ye couldn't help but suspect that He Tong could still eat. Next, Bai Ye and He Tong continued to go shopping, just looking around, looking at the beautiful scenery, and looking at the various aspects of life. Many people seemed to love the commander very much. At this time, He Tong sighed. Just along the way, I met many people who took the initiative to greet Commander Bai Ye, and they were not the kind of flattering attitude. Because I used to work in the Imperial Capital Guard, don't you remember? Bai Ye said casually. But it's mainly because of the commander's personality. He Tong said. After these days of getting along, she has roughly understood the character of Commander Bai Ye. It was not surprising to her that the commander was loved by the people when he served in the Imperial Guard. Maybe, but in fact, I just did what I should do, whether it was the Imperial Guard before or the assassination team now. Bai Ye did not want to take credit for himself. In his opinion, he just took money to do things, and then did what he wanted to do according to his mood, which was not glorious. But in our eyes, there will probably be no commander more gentle than you. He Tong smiled slightly. Is it really so exaggerated? But Bai Ye thought about it and it seemed to be true. Now Minister Ernest almost has everything under his control in the entire empire. Even the core ministers are so cruel and dark. How much better can the officials under his command be? It is estimated that the entire court is almost corrupt from top to bottom. Bai Ye is a special one. Perhaps because of his death, the minister trusts him quite a lot. Otherwise, when he was the captain of the Imperial Capital Guard, he would have been targeted by many corrupt officials. This is considered to be backed by his death. If the position of the manager of the Imperial Assassination Force was given to someone else, it is likely that the previous cruel system would continue to be used. And it might even be more brutal. So please don't leave casually, sir. I'll ask you to take care of me in the future. Hei Tong said from the bottom of his heart. She didn't want to experience the feeling of losing her companions, whether they were punished or died in the mission. Bai Ye was the only manager who changed the system, and even cared about their safety, which made her feel very rare. Bai Ye nodded and said, I won't leave casually, unless something unexpected happens suddenly, and it's hard to say about this kind of thing. After dinner, Bai Ye and Hei Tong returned to the base. The assassination force base is of course also in the imperial capital. Hei Tong and Bai Ye are back so soon. I thought it would take several days. The Saiga cave is quite far from the capital. Maybe they changed to a dangerous mount. Although I don't know if Hei Tong has completed what he wanted to do, he looks like he is not injured. That's good. Faced with everyone's concern, Hei Tong smiled and said, in fact, the commander and I came back at noon. We just walked around the street for a while. Oh, so you went out to play with the commander. We were thinking that it was a pity that Hei Tong didn't enjoy his vacation time. Now it seems that this worry is unnecessary. While Hei Tong was chatting and laughing with others, Bai Ye left alone in silence. Seeing this, Sai Lu followed him. Master, what happened? Why do you seem to be a little worried? Sai Lu asked. Nothing. I just want to find out some things, such as the medicines that Hei Tong and others usually take. Bai Ye explained. That's good, I thought something happened to Master during his trip. Sai Lu was relieved at once, at least Master's health was not a problem. Then, Bai Ye went directly to the laboratory, where there was a lot of information, and there should be something he wanted to know. Sai Lu followed closely. There were still experimenters working in the laboratory. Bai Ye said directly, I want to see the information about the medicine. The experimenters would naturally not disobey, because the information here is confidential only to outsiders and those children, and Bai Ye and Sai you must have the authority in this regard. After getting the information, Bai Ye's pupils suddenly shrank and his brows slightly wrinkled when he opened it. Those drugs are really not simple, according to the description in the information. The drugs used by the Empire Assassination Force will have a serious negative impact on the brain, and the powerful ability is completely at the cost of greatly shortening life. In addition, they will be very dependent on drugs. If they do not use drugs for a period of time, not only will their physical ability decline, but they will also have a very painful withdrawal reaction. Putting the poor-performing team in solitary confinement and not giving them drugs for a few days is one of the punishment methods of the previous manager. The data also records that a member of the assassination team who was only in his teens, overused drugs, and aged his body to the state of 70 or 80 years old. He was directly punished because his physical weakness affected the mission. In addition, all members of the assassination team reinforcement group will be forcibly brainwashed regularly, which is why Hei Tong and others will never think of betraying the Empire no matter what. Needless to say, many other crazy systems are mostly required by the superiors. And the previous manager also acted according to the regulations of the superiors. Bai Ye suddenly realized that his situation was still a bit dangerous. After all, what he did since he took office did not comply with the regulations of his superiors. How can this be? It's such a dangerous drug. Seilu next to him also read the data with Bai Ye, and she immediately felt very confused. They are tools to be used. If they have no use value, they will be thrown away directly. What's the fuss about this? At this time, an experimenter said in a very indifferent tone. Chapter 47. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yes, as their managers and superiors, you shouldn't be so surprised. After all, they are newcomers, so they probably just know about these things. Just a kind reminder to you, these are all decided by the big shots above. If you don't follow them well, you will get into trouble. Almost all the experimenters don't care about the children's affairs, they only know to follow the rules set by their superiors. Those who have the intention of resisting have been cleared out long ago, and those who can still stay here are naturally obedient. Seilu was about to get angry, but Bai Ye raised his hand to stop him. Can I take these materials? Bai Ye asked the experimenter. Of course, but if something unexpected happens, it will be your responsibility. The experimenter responded, as for what Bai Ye and Sai Lu will do with these materials, they don't care. They can't control it in the first place, because Bai Ye and Sai Lu's status is higher than theirs. No problem. After saying that, Bai Ye left with some important information. His other hand held Sai Lu to prevent Sai Lu from doing anything impulsive. When they were outside the laboratory, Bai Ye explained to Sai Lu, the focus now is to find a way to make He Tong and others sober up, and stop them from actively accepting the destruction of the drugs and the destruction of the empire. If we just casually attacked the experimenters, our positions would definitely be lost. With this position, he can at least contact He Tong and others conveniently. It is also not feasible to forcibly take He Tong and others away from the Empire Assassination Force, because there are records in the data that the people in the reinforcement group have been brainwashed countless times. The probability of success in so suddenly asking them to leave the Empire Assassination Force is extremely slim. Bai Ye still remembers that He Tong said that Chi Tong persuaded He Tong for a long time before he defected, but He Tong never agreed. Even Chi Tong, He Tong's best sister, could not be persuaded, which is enough to show that the Empire Assassination Force brainwashed He Tong and others very thoroughly, so Bai Ye did not expect that he could easily persuade them. Yes. Salo lowered his head slightly and listened respectfully to the master's teachings. In short, it is the most undesirable to take direct action. Although the words of those experimenters are unpleasant, the root cause is not those guys, but the so-called big shots above, or even this dark and corrupt empire. Bai Ye continued. Empire. These words suddenly reminded Sai Lu that she had always regarded loyalty to the empire as absolute justice, because her parents were also soldiers of the empire when they were alive. Hearing the master say that the empire was dark and corrupt, she subconsciously wanted to refute, but she couldn't find any reason to refute. The previous events were vivid, the nobles who killed foreigners, Captain Uka, etc. And today's incident, Sai Lu has regarded He Tong and others as companions. She cares about her companions very much and cannot accept the inhumane practices of the empire's assassination troops. Could it be that it's just that the big guys in the Empire's assassination force are bad guys, and the Empire as a whole should? Salo wanted to convince Bai Ye to change his view of the Empire, but even she herself was a little difficult to convince. She was already deeply shaken in her heart, and the struggle on her face was obvious. In response, Bai Ye was not in a hurry to let Sai Lu identify the darkness of the Empire. Take your time, it's okay, I can accompany you to slowly see the full picture of this Empire. After all, he has not yet understood the entire empire. Salo's heart was touched and he nodded vigorously, yeah. Next, let He Tong and the others understand these materials first. Bai Ye's eyes flickered slightly, and he said in a deep voice, Bai Ye and Sai Lu took the materials from the laboratory directly to the usual lounge of the assassination force. I have something to show you, but I guess you probably know some of the things in it. Bai Ye put the materials directly on the table. He Tong took the materials first, and a few people came over. After reading the information quickly, He Tong's face changed slightly, but he didn't react much. Some things were unexpected, and some were expected. For example, the side effects of the drugs were something they had already known. After all, they were brainwashed, not stupid, and they could fully feel the various negative effects of the drugs on their bodies. What surprised He Tong the most was the content of the brainwashing information. This is something they really don't know at all. They only know that they need to receive regular drug enhancement, and every time they receive drug enhancement, they are in a state of unconsciousness. They don't know that it is not actually drug enhancement, but brainwashing for them. The information was circulated one by one, and soon everyone finished reading the content of the information. Brainwashing? What have we been brainwashed about? I don't know. Maybe they want us to be more loyal to the Empire, but I think this is a bit unnecessary. Yeah, we won't betray the Empire at all, so why do we need to brainwash us frequently? That's seeing everyone's reaction. It was almost the same as Bai Ye expected. They have been brainwashed so thoroughly that they don't even think of a problem. It is brainwashing that makes them loyal to the Empire. Bai Ye doesn't plan to mention brainwashing for the time being. After all, even if he mentions it, they won't believe it after being brainwashed countless times. Don't you have any feelings about the drugs? Bai Ye asked. No, there is nothing we can do about it, because our abilities are not as good as the elite group, so we can only become stronger in this way. Kelly smiled calmly and said, if there were no drugs, we would have been punished from the beginning. After all, we don't have enough ability to serve the Empire. The others had similar ideas to Kelly. After all, they were brainwashed in the same way. Bai Ye was not surprised to get this answer. What about He Tong? Do you think the same as them? Bai Ye turned to He Tong and asked. Yes. He Tong nodded without hesitation and said, if we want to fight the rebels, we must pay a certain price. Selu still found it hard to accept. Fighting the rebels is one thing, and brainwashing, drugs, and punishment are another. Even if it is to fight the rebels, there is no need to treat everyone so cruelly. I understand. Bai Ye sighed slightly. They have been brainwashed to this extent, and it is indeed not easy to persuade them. They can only be changed slowly. He Tong obviously didn't take the information to heart. Instead, she was worried about Bai Ye. Commander, I'll go with you to relax later. I feel that you worry too much about us and you are a little worried. P.S. There will be another update after 0 o'clock, which will be counted as tomorrow's update. Tomorrow is the first day of the debut, and I will start to add more updates according to the gift value. Chapter 48. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yes, sir, let little He Tong accompany you to relax. We are really fine. You don't have to worry about us. Kelly also said, not only He Tong and Kelly, everyone didn't take the information to heart, and simply thought that the commander was just worried about them. They didn't think that Bai Ye's behavior seriously violated the rules. Once the big shots above knew about it, they would definitely arrest Bai Ye and Sai Lu for this crime. Okay, maybe I really think too much. Bai Ye also ended the topic of information. All the people in the assassination team were unmoved by the information. If he continued to emphasize the information, it would only backfire. It would be best to let the information go. Wait for me a moment. Bai Ye said to He Tong, and then took the information and prepared to return it to the laboratory. Sai Lu followed again. Master, we can't persuade them at all. This is the power of brainwashing. After being brainwashed to this extent, no one can persuade them. We can only slowly find opportunities to change them. Bai Ye said softly. Well, I will protect everyone before that. Selu said seriously. Then, Bai Ye and Sai Lu returned the data to the laboratory. The experimenters did not ask what they did with the data. According to the agreement, Bai Ye and He Tong went out for a walk together on the streets of the imperial capital. Not long after they left, everyone in the assassination team started to discuss. Do you think He Tong really has feelings for Bai Ye? I found that He Tong seems to be a little close to Bai Ye. I guess it's right. Although little He Tong has a good relationship with us, it has never happened before that she actively invites boys to relax together. Indeed, Bai Ye is so good to us, it's not surprising that He Tong has a good impression, and He Tong is already that age. At this time, Kelly also said, it is precisely because of this that I just thought of creating opportunities for little He Tong. She mentioned the name of the commander twice when we were chatting tonight. Hearing that they were talking about Bai Ye and He Tong very enthusiastically, Sai Lu murmured to herself, He Tong likes master. For some reason, she suddenly felt a stuffy feeling in her chest. It is obvious that a girl likes master, which is something that she should be happy for master, but why does she feel a little uncomfortable? Sai Lu couldn't understand what was wrong with her at this time. Maybe he is a little tired. He should be fine after a good sleep. If He Tong was alone, he would not be allowed to go out easily by the guards of the base. He must have the permission of the superior. Accompanied by Bai Ye, he and He Tong were not stopped at all. The imperial capital was brightly lit at night. Most of the shops on both sides of the street were closed. There were much fewer pedestrians on the road than during the day. Occasionally, a few figures could be seen. In such a quiet environment, it was more suitable for Bai Ye and He Tong to relax. Superior, before you worked in the Imperial Capital Guard, were you also a soldier in the Imperial Capital? At this time, He Tong asked some daily topics. No, my hometown is a small village on the southern border. I just came to the imperial capital not long ago because the village was destroyed by dangerous species. Bai Ye responded. I see. I can't quite remember what happened before I joined the assassination unit. I was too young at that time. I only remember wandering around with my sister. Hei Tong recalled. You must miss your sister now, right? Yes, I miss her very much, so I want to kill her so that she can never leave me. Hei Tong said such an incredible thing with a smile, and the cute smile seemed a little scary at this moment. Bai Ye felt a little embarrassed. If he had known, he would not have mentioned the matter about Chi Tong. However, at this moment, several figures suddenly passed by quickly on the roof not far away. With Bai Ye's strong insight, he saw those figures at the first time, but they couldn't see their faces clearly, because they were all wearing black robes that covered their faces. They could only see the tall man in armor, but they couldn't see his face either. Did you see it? That should be the imperial weapon user who was haunted by evil spirits. They are the Night Raid. At this moment, Bai Ye whispered to Hei Tong. Yes, my sister is among them. Hei Tong's right hand has he put it on the hilt of 8 houses and said indifferently, Sir, let's catch the Night Raid tonight. Let's go and see first. Bai Ye did not agree to Hei Tong directly, because his attitude towards Night Raid was not hostile. When Bai Ye was the captain of the Imperial Capital Guard, he knew some things about Night Raid. After all, the security of the Imperial Capital was managed by him. None of the targets assassinated by Night Raid was innocent. They were all guys like Uka who deserved to die, so he deliberately turned a blind eye to Night Raid and did not confront Night Raid head-on, otherwise he should have met Night Raid long ago. Next, Bai Ye and Hei Tong chased the black shadows moving quickly on the house. At the same time, the black shadows had of course discovered that someone was chasing them behind them. Leon glanced at the 2 figures following them from behind and was immediately surprised. Is that Bai Ye and Hei Tong? I'm a bit unlucky, I just happened to run into them. Main said solemnly, this route should be the safest, avoiding all the security forces in the imperial capital at this time. Is it really just a coincidence? Or did they predict our plan in advance? In fact, it was indeed their bad luck tonight. If Bai Ye and Hei Tong hadn't suddenly come out for a walk, they wouldn't have been discovered. It's hard to carry out the assassination plan now. Let's assassinate the target another day. Do we have to get rid of those 2 guys now? Brand was the most special. He directly used the armor-type imperial weapon that covered his whole body, so that he didn't have to worry about exposing his appearance even if he didn't wear a black robe. You go back first, I want to bury Hei Tong. Tong stopped immediately. Having been discovered, the assassination plan tonight must not be able to continue. Later, she must fight Hei Tong quickly, otherwise she will be surrounded by the Empire's assassination troops and the army. How can we let you stay here alone? Since we have to fight, let's try to kill them together. Leonie said immediately. Yes, they are at most 2 Imperial artifact users. We have 6 people. We will deal with them as soon as possible and go back to reformulate the assassination plan. Main has already taken out the Imperial artifact pumpkin cannon and her tone seems very confident. But the boss said that Bai Ye is a talent that can be won over. Remember not to kill him later. Brand reminded. At this time, the 6 people of the Night Raid had stopped, as if waiting for Bai Ye and Hei Tong to come to the door. Bai Ye and Hei Tong came to them immediately. Bai Ye, who noticed something strange, took the initiative to hold Hei Tong's hand, ready to use Void at any time. Hei Tong didn't expect Bai Ye to suddenly hold her hand, and immediately said lightly, Sir, now is not the time to do this kind of thing. However, Bai Ye had no intention of letting go, and his attitude was very tough. What? Seeing Hei Tong being held by the boy's hand, Chi Tong's defense was immediately broken. Chapter 49. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Akame is a complete sister control. Unless it is a man she approves of, she doesn't want to see Hei Tong being so intimate with other men, so Akame was suddenly upset at this moment, but she still knew the situation clearly, and immediately suppressed her emotional fluctuations and turned back into a cold-blooded killer. pulling out murasame from the scabbard, she decided to bury Haitong tonight. At this time, you still dare to be affectionate in front of us. Main deliberately lowered her cloak hood, holding the pumpkin cannon in her hand and aiming directly at Haitong. Immediately, a shock wave of spiritual energy was blasted out. Their main target of attack was Haitong, because they knew that Haitong had been brainwashed by the Empire and it was impossible to convince him. Haitong wanted to dodge immediately, but his hand was still held by Bai Ye. Believe me. Bai Ye just said this lightly. It can also make Haitong feel at ease. In her mind, Commander Bai Ye is indeed a trustworthy person. Yeah. Haitong nodded slightly. However, at the moment when the shock wave of the pumpkin cannon was about to hit her, she subconsciously raised the 8 chambers to resist the shock wave. However, what was incredible was that she didn't feel anything at all, as if the shock wave went straight through her body, and she didn't feel anything at all. Haitong just made a puzzled sound, and a huge boom came from behind her. She turned her head and saw that it was an abandoned wall behind her that was blown down, but fortunately no innocent people were hurt. What's going on? The shock wave just now was clearly attacking her directly. Could it be Commander Bai Ye's imperial weapon ability? What? Seeing this, Marin was also surprised. Her attack actually went straight through the opponent's body. Be careful, their abilities are very strange. But Marin came back to her senses immediately and warned her companions. Akatong and the others did not attack easily. You are Haitong's sister, Akatong, right? At this time, Bai Ye spoke to Akatong. Akatong nodded slightly, her expression stern as if facing a great enemy. When facing Bai Ye and Haitong, Akatong did not deliberately hide her face, because the news that she betrayed the Empire and joined the Revolutionary Army had long been spread. Her appearance was also the first to be exposed in the night attack, and her portraits and bounty orders could be seen everywhere on the street. Therefore, Bai Ye could see Akatong's appearance clearly, which was highly similar to the portrait on the bounty order. The flowing black hair, the red eyes, the facial features are somewhat similar to Haitong, and they are also very delicate. Wearing a black skirt and a black cloak, she has a slender figure and looks taller than Haitong. You two sisters finally met, but it seems that you are going to draw your swords against each other. Bai Ye has already noticed Chi-Tong's murderous intention towards Haitong. Haitong wants to kill Chi-Tong with his own hands, but he didn't expect that Chi-Tong's attitude towards Haitong is the same. The sisters who once depended on each other are now killing each other. There is no other choice. I want to free Haitong with my own hands and end her pain. AKA Tong's tone is very firm. I will also kill my sister and let her stay with me forever. Haitong laughed. Don't say anything. I won't let you kill Haitong, but if you insist on fighting, don't blame me for being rude. Bai Ye's tone gradually became colder. He just maintains a neutral attitude towards Night Raid and the Revolutionary Army, which does not mean that he can tolerate the other party hurting the people around him. Although this should be said to be a private matter between Chi-Tong and Haitong, he certainly can't watch Haitong being killed. Akagi, should we now? Leon asked Akagi in a low voice. Retreat, his ability is very strange. Don't take risks without the assurance of a quick victory. Akagi said calmly and decisively. Besides, due to the huge noise caused by the pumpkin cannon just knocking down the ruined wall, the Imperial Capital Guard had been alarmed, and the figures attacking from a distance were probably the Imperial Assassination Force, and the army will probably gather here soon. In this situation, we must not fight to the death, otherwise something big will happen. Then let's go. Rabbit took the lead and returned along the original route. Akagi, Main and others followed closely behind. Akagi glanced back at Bai Ye and Haitong behind him, and they did not chase after him. Sure enough, not long after the 6 people of the Night Raid evacuated, the people of the Imperial Capital Guard had arrived, but when they arrived, only Bai Ye and Haitong were left here. Captain Bai Ye. There was a sound of fighting here just now. Did you encounter a Night Raid? Although Bai Ye had left his post for a few days, the members of the Imperial Capital Guard still habitually called him Captain. Well, but they have evacuated. You made a wasted trip. Bai Ye nodded. No, this is what we should do. It won't be a problem. You are Captain Bai Ye. I guessed that the night raid tonight was going to assassinate some big shot, but was blocked by Captain Bai Ye. Alas, with Captain Bai Ye's strength, it is really a waste of talent in our Imperial Capital Guard. The members of the Imperial Capital Guard immediately thought that it was Bai Ye who repelled the night raid. As for He Tong, they didn't know her, and just thought she was a weak girl from her appearance. They didn't know where Captain Bai Ye was working now, they only knew that she was transferred to another position. Then, the members of the Imperial Capital Guard began to investigate and deal with the scene. It was found that there were few traces of fighting, and the only clear trace of fighting was the wall that was blown down. Now, they immediately admired Captain Bai Ye even more, because they thought that Captain Bai Ye scared off the night raid in a few moves, and Captain Bai Ye looked unharmed. You know, night raid often involves at least 2 or 3 Imperial artifact users acting together. While the Imperial Capital Guard was dealing with the scene, He Tong was still thinking about what had just happened. Captain, do you want to stop me from killing my sister? At this time, He Tong asked. Maybe, but what is certain is that I will protect you, after all. Bai Ye responded. Hearing this, He Tong's eyes trembled slightly, and she looked up at Bai Ye, as if this sentence moved her. After all, I am your manager. Bai Ye said with a smile. The highlight in He Tong's eyes disappeared instantly, and her mouth bulged slightly, as if she was in a bad mood. Let's not talk about my sister and me first. How long are you going to hold my hand, sir? As if in revenge, He Tong deliberately emphasized that Bai Ye was still holding his hand. P.S. There will be another update at 10 o'clock in the evening, which is the 3rd update according to the gift value. Let me talk about the update time in the future. Normally, there are 2 updates at 6 o'clock in the afternoon and 10 o'clock in the evening. If the gift value meets the conditions for additional updates, there will be 3 updates at 12 noon, 6 o'clock in the afternoon and 10 o'clock in the evening. I will try to update the time as stable as possible. Chapter 50. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sorry, I forgot. Bai Ye immediately let go of He Tong's hand and smiled awkwardly. What are you apologizing for? I didn't say I hate this. He Tong said. What the hell is going on? Bai Ye was helpless. Let's continue walking. At this time, He Tong walked forward with a brisk pace. When Bai Ye caught up, He Tong suddenly asked, Commander, you could have fought just now, why do you seem to be avoiding fighting? The 6 of them are all Imperial weapon users. The situation is not favorable to us, my body has not recovered yet, and you are not suitable to summon super dangerous species in the Imperial capital, so. Bai Ye explained immediately. His tone was very natural, and he didn't seem to be talking nonsense at all. In fact, what he said was half true and half false. His body was fine a long time ago, and he was just fooling He Tong. After all, He Tong was brainwashed by the Empire. If he showed that he was not hostile to night raid, there was no guarantee that something unexpected would happen. For the sake of prudence, he could not reveal too much to He Tong. Indeed, He Tong believed it completely. She always regarded Bai Ye's Mangekyō Sharingan as an Imperial tool. The consequences of using 2 Imperial tools at the same time were very serious, so Bai Ye's claim that his body had not recovered was highly credible. As for the super dangerous species, as Bai Ye said, the population in the Imperial capital was too dense, and the super dangerous species were too large and had a very wide attack range, which would affect a large number of innocent civilians. Although the 5-8 house members other than the super dangerous species were also very strong, it was still too risky to deal with the 6 night raid Imperial tool users at the same time. It would be the best situation to let them evacuate on their own initiative. Once the battle begins, it will be different. Bai Ye continued to deceive. If it's just me, it's fine, but I still have to worry about your safety. I don't want you to be hurt by them. Really? I understand. He Tong nodded. It's not bad to feel cared for like this. The 2 continued to walk. However, there were still some things lingering in He Tong's mind. She suddenly sighed to herself. In fact, when my sister asked me to escape from the assassination team with her, I was very entangled, but I still felt unacceptable after entanglement. We must prove how strong we are and get the recognition of our superiors. We must fight for the empire. If we don't do this, our dead companions will be too pitiful. I think my sister not only betrayed the empire, but also betrayed those dead companions. She chose ambition instead of her sister. Hei Tong said a lot in one breath, all about her sister. Bai Ye listened quietly. He also wanted to know what Hei Tong was thinking. My sister's ambition is to save the people in deep suffering, trying to change this empire, and even the whole world. In fact, this serious sister is my favorite sister. Hei Tong covered her head with her hands with a painful look. I obviously like this sister the most, but I still can't forgive her. My brain is already a mess. Every time I think deeply about this matter, my mind will be completely messed up. She can realize the contradiction in her heart, but she doesn't know why. Her brain can't think deeply about this problem. It's obviously because you've been brainwashed too much. Bai Ye said seriously. It was mentioned in those materials that only the enhanced group was brainwashed, and the elite group was trained in another way. So when Akame realized the darkness of the empire, she chose to leave and join the revolutionary army. When Bonnie was to be punished because of her injury and could not recover, Bonnie chose to run away. Bonnie, who was also a member of the Elite Seven at the time, did not join the revolutionary army, but ran away to find Nahashu, the original captain of the Elite Seven. This very serious self-contradiction of Hei Tong is 100% caused by brainwashing. I like this sister the most, but I can't forgive this sister, because I have been subconsciously given the suggestion of never betraying the empire. No, it's not like that. People who have been successfully brainwashed basically don't believe that they have become like this because of brainwashing, and Hei Tong is no exception. Bai Ye also knew this, so he didn't dwell on this topic any further. Whether it's true or not, I won't let you continue to be tortured like this. Okay, don't think about it for now that we were originally here to relax, but now we have more worries. Bai Ye's tone suddenly became softer. Hei Tong nodded slightly, and immediately put those messy thoughts behind him. At least now, let's relax with the commander. At this time, the 6 people of Akatsuki had returned to the base of Night Raid. Boss, we were discovered by Bai Ye and Hei Tong during the operation, and we had no choice but to put the assassination plan on hold. Leon explained the situation to Nageshitan. We were discovered by these 2 people. There is really nothing we can do. I hope no one of you got hurt. Nageshitan naturally did not mean to blame them. By the way, how do you feel after contacting Bai Ye? I feel like he doesn't seem to be interested in fighting with us. When we evacuated, he didn't hold us back. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be able to come back so easily. Bran touched his chin with one hand and thought. At this time, he had removed the armed form of evil ghost haunting, and was a tall man with a strange crew cut. I feel a little angry for some reason. It seems that we are underestimated by him. Main muttered. It should not be underestimated by us, but just don't want to fight with us. Hill said with a smile. I am more concerned about that strange ability. Main's Imperial Tool Pumpkin can't hit Hei Tong at all. This kind of weird ability should only be available to Imperial Tools, but doesn't Hei Tong already have 8 rooms? Rabak analyzed. It means it should be Bai Ye's Imperial Tool, and it can also let Hei Tong share his Imperial Tool ability. Bai Ye, he looks like Hei Tong's boyfriend, don't you think? Akatong? Only Leon's focus was different from others. At that time, she found Akaheim's reaction very cute and interesting, so she deliberately asked Akaheim, I won't recognize him before I know how he feels about Kuroheim. Akaheim suddenly looked dazed and serious, and expressed her sister control feeling seriously. P.S. The update is complete, keep asking for gifts.